Welcome back to Match B2B Insights. I'm Benny Fluman. This is part 3 of our 6-part series on negotiation management in global B2B environments. In episode 1, we talked about how access is not authority. In episode 2, we looked at when yes kills the deal because signal is nautical stage. Today we're on episode 3, body language, silence, and the unspoken deal. With me today, Brian Newman and Brenda. Brian, Brenda, great to have you both here. Here's a scene I see every week. A deal sits in CRM at 70%. The next step says, waiting for feedback. The buyer goes quiet for 12 days. And internally, everyone tells themselves a comforting story. They're busy. Legal is reviewing. Budget is coming. Maybe. But here's the point. Silence is not meaning. Silence is data. Interpretation is your job. If you're running a pipeline right now, you've seen this exact situation.
And that 12 days matters. Not the buyer is quiet in general. 12 days after a pricing call, with no reply to the summary email. That's not a vibe. That's a pattern change.
Right, and the commercial damage is immediate. One quiet buyer can distort forecast, rep behavior, and management attention. If 5 deals in stage 4 are probably fine, your pipeline looks healthier than it is. That's false confidence dressed up as momentum.
Exactly. I push teams on this because they confuse activity with progress. A rep says, "We had a great meeting." Fine. Then the CFO stopped speaking in the last 15 minutes. The champion answered every question. Nobody logged that. Why? Because they were listening for words and ignoring the absence of words.
But I want to challenge one thing. Quiet does not automatically mean risk. Some buyers are processors. Some senior executives barely speak in meetings and then approve the deal 2 days later. So if we train teams to panic every time there's a pause, we create a different problem.
I agree with the correction, not the softness. Quiet isn't disinterest, but it is still a signal. In enterprise sales, the mistake is binary thinking. Silent means no, or silent means all good. Usually it's neither. It's unresolved meaning.
Yes, unresolved meaning. That's the phrase. Silence is data. Interpretation is your job. Not your emotion. Not your hope. Your job.
And that applies beyond email silence. Body language, too. If a buyer was animated in discovery, then suddenly folds arms, leans back, camera off, one-word answers after pricing, something changed. You don't know what changed yet, but pretending nothing changed is expensive.
The folded arms after pricing moment. That's the one reps miss. They hear, looks reasonable, and log positive sentiment. Meanwhile, the economic buyer just mentally compared your number to an internal alternative and went cold.
Let me give a simple case. Israeli software company, US prospect, solid process, 6 meetings. In meeting 6, the buyer says, "Send the proposal." Team celebrates. Proposal goes out. Then, silence for 3 weeks. The founder tells himself procurement is slow. Sales says quarter-end timing. Marketing says nurture them. Wrong. The real issue? A competitor reframed the category in one call and made implementation risk look bigger than product value.
3 weeks. That's the number I'm stuck on. If it's 3 days, okay, maybe normal. 3 weeks after send the proposal is a different animal. And they kept the deal open as if nothing had changed?
Open, optimistic, and consuming forecast space. That's the problem. The wrong interpretation didn't just delay one deal. It distorted the whole board view.
And reps start making bad downstream choices. They stop prospecting because they think a big one is coming in. Managers stop pushing urgency because the CRM says late stage. Then the quarter closes and everyone acts surprised by a fact that was visible 21 days earlier.
So maybe the practical reframe is this. A quiet buyer is not an uninterested buyer. But a quiet buyer is never a neutral event. Something is happening. Inside the account, inside the buying group, or inside your own process. Agreed. But ignoring it is always expensive.
Perfect. And if you don't force interpretation with evidence, you let assumption run your revenue system. That's where leaders get into trouble.
So let's make it operational. Most teams stay in interpretation mode. Very few have a structured way to handle it. So let's make this operational. 4 moves: observe, trigger, test, confirm. Not philosophy, workflow. First, observe what changed. Response time dropped from 1 day to 9. Decision makers stopped joining. Tone shifted after security review. Something changed. Log that. If it's not logged, it didn't happen.
And be specific. Not, they seemed off. Try, on Tuesday's call, after annual pricing was shown, Maria stopped asking rollout questions and only asked about termination language. That's observable. That's usable.
Second, trigger. What likely created the silence or the shift? Pricing? Internal politics? A new stakeholder? Budget freeze? Fear of implementation? This is where teams get sloppy. They jump from silence to conclusion without identifying the event that may have caused it.
I'd push even harder. You need one primary trigger hypothesis, maybe 2, not a menu of 12 excuses. If everything could explain it, nothing explains it.
Okay, but then comes the human part. Test. And this is where I think a lot of sellers underperform because they ask weak questions. Just checking in is useless. Wanted to bump this is useless. Test means you present the change and ask about the meaning. I noticed things slowed down after we involved security. Is the concern now around integration risk? It feels like priorities may have shifted internally. Should we assume this moved out of the current quarter? After the pricing discussion, the tone changed. Is this now a budget discussion rather than a value discussion?
Give me one.
I noticed the urgency changed after we reviewed implementation. Has the concern shifted from value to rollout risk? That is so much stronger than following up.
Yes, or when legal join, the timeline stretched from this quarter to sometime soon. Is the delay legal, or is the business case no longer strong enough internally? You are testing the silence, not decorating it.
That's the line. You're not decorating the silence. You're testing it. Silence is data. Interpretation is your job.
And then confirm before you move the deal. This one matters for leaders. Don't let reps advance a deal because they feel good. Confirm means evidence, mutual next step, named stakeholder, dated action, or explicit risk surfaced and addressed. If there is no dated next step with a named owner, this is not a progressing deal. It's a waiting situation.
The dated action piece, that's huge. We'll circle back next month is not confirmation. Procurement sends red lines by the 18th and security review is on the 22nd. That's confirmation.
Let's bring in body language, because global teams miss this all the time. Quiet authority exists. In US enterprise meetings, the person speaking least may hold the most power. In some European settings too, the senior operator waits, watches, then asks one question at minute 28 that reveals the real issue. If your rep ignores that question because the champion stayed enthusiastic, you misread the room.
The minute 28 question is so real. One sentence from the quiet executive, who owns adoption after launch? And suddenly you realize the deal isn't about features anymore. It's about operational risk.
And if you miss that, the CRM still says green. That's how deals look alive but never close. Not dead enough to remove, not healthy enough to win. They become pipeline theater.
Let me connect this to what we see with companies we work with at Match B2B. Most teams don't have a pipeline problem. They have an interpretation problem. They see activity and assume progress, but they don't really know what's happening inside the deal. That's exactly why we built our model the way we did. We start with a setup phase where we define ICP, signals, data, and messaging, and build the pipeline correctly. Then we run a structured process for 3 months where we generate real conversations and real opportunities. But the key point is commitment. We don't just run activity, we commit to targets. And if those targets are not reached within those 3 months after the setup, we continue working for free until they are. Because pipeline is not about effort, it's about building something that actually produces results. So, just to make this clear, silence is not neutral, it's a signal. And if you don't interpret it correctly, you're managing your pipeline based on assumption.
So the managerial takeaway is pretty hard-edged. Observe the shift, identify the trigger, test the meaning, confirm with evidence. If you skip step 3, you're guessing. If you skip step 4, you're reporting fiction.
And the cost isn't abstract. It's deal slippage, wasted rep capacity, bad board conversations, and revenue plans built on stories.
That's where we'll leave it. Silence is data. Interpretation is your job. And if you don't test the silence, you're building your deal on assumption. If this feels familiar, don't ignore it. If you're listening to this and you see this happening in your pipeline, go to LinkedIn, find me, Benny Fluman, and send me a message. Just write what you're seeing. Where deals are slowing down, where things don't move, where things feel unclear. From there, we'll have a conversation and look at it together.
Sharp and useful. Thanks, Benny.
Good one.